Yeah. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Buck said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust.
You sound scared.
It's about have the guts, we're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome to 5 on the Floor live here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. We'll also make its way over to the podcast feeds. We got the whole crew tonight. Miami Heat lose 119-110 in Indiana. They finish a road trip of 6 games at 2-4. They come back at 5-7 on the season. They now have a worse record than the Dolphins. It's not something I would expect to say at this point of the season. We'll get into where they go from here. They've actually got a quick turnaround. They play Philadelphia at home on Monday at 7:30. We do not know at this point if Embiid is playing. It's a quirky schedule. They come home, play a back-to-back, and then they don't play for 5 days. It's very weird. So they'll have some time to reflect on where they're at after that game, but now there's no chance after that game that they'll be over 500 as they go into that break. So I've got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. We've got Greg Sylvander. You can follow Greg Sylvander. I got Brady Hawk. You can follow Brady Hawk 305. Also, if you're looking for me on Blue Sky, I'm there at Ethan J. Skolnick now. We mentioned Off the Floor. Make sure you subscribe to that. Link is right here in the description. And thanks to everybody who joined us on Playback tonight. We had a good crowd. We actually had 9 hosts today. So I said spread it out. We all went there together. All right. 119-110. We'll get into some of our segments as we always do here. My overall takeaway on this is, and we'll get into the injury too to Jaquez, which may be concerning here over the next few days. My overall takeaway to this is we're starting to see certain patterns and trends with this team. And we're seeing a couple of guys who are playing really well off of each other. We're seeing Tyler Hero, even if he has a bad first half, he recovers in the second half and his numbers stabilize and sort of get to a certain point. And we're just not seeing enough from some other guys game to game. And I want to get into who some of those other guys are and what some of the solutions are. But before we do, let's start with the player of the game here, and then we'll play off of that.
And now it's time for the A-Aggressive Insurance Player of the Night, sponsored by our friend Lynette. You can find her at insurancebylynette.com. That's with 2 N's and 2 T's, insurancebylynette.com. If you need car insurance, renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance, or any other type of insurance, she's the person to go to. Based in Lauderhill, she services the entire Tri-County area here in South Florida, and she will make sure to get you the best deal. She'll probably talk to you about the Heat while you're at it. Reach out to her, insurancebylynette.com. And now, the player of the game.
All right, Brady, I'm going to let you challenge me on this one because the obvious place to go is Tyler, as we've gone so many other days. And he did end up with 28 points on 8 of 18 shooting, 7 of 11 from 3. So he was 1 of 7 from 2. But then he started to draw some fouls later in the game, got a couple of fouls as he did go into the paint. 4 rebounds, 4 assists. Bam had 24 points, 8 rebounds, not as big a game as he had the first game in Indiana. My player of the game for the Heat tonight, and look, the player of the game overall is Miles Turner. He went nuts, 34 points and 9 rebounds. But I kind of want to make a point here. It's almost like Tyler needs somebody else alongside him to score, and lately it's been Duncan. He was not great in the first game in Indiana, but, I mean, he shot them back in this thing, 20 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and you made the point over and over. Am I helicoptering right now? I am? Oh, my God. How's that even happening? I don't hear it. All right.
Look, we can hear you, but the helicopter is absolutely happening.
I feel like you, infected me with that, because I don't know, because that never happened to me before.
I don't know, but you need to come back in.
I'll come back in. I'll go out, come back in. I don't know what that is. That's really weird. All right, but Brady, you have wanted Hero and Robinson play together more. Go.
Yeah, that was great. That looked like the Miami Heat tonight. That looked like a good summary of what we saw in the third quarter specifically. But what he was getting at pretty much is, if you were to ask me who the player of the game was for Miami, I would agree. I would say it was Duncan Robinson. I mean, it feels like game over game, it's getting to a point now where some of their offense, it gets to a point where it's like, wait till Duncan gets in and see what he can trigger, and then everything else kind of plays out of that. And the three-man group of Bam, Duncan, and Tyler seems to be pretty seamless right now. Like in terms of actions they run, in terms of like playing off each other, kind of finding their spots. When it's not in that grouping, it just feels like things are starting to be forced. And when they're not in that grouping as well, Tyler starts to play a lot more on the ball than we were talking about earlier in the season. And it gets to a point where it's like Jaime's being the spot-up shooter and Tyler's being the creator, where it should be the opposite. Jaime should be creating and trying to force mismatches and get into his spots, and Tyler should be the spot-up guy. And it feels like when Duncan's out on the floor, it just puts everybody into their correct roles and puts everybody right in the spots they should be in. So credit to him. He came out, I think he was 3 for 3 to start the game with quick 8 points, but it's like, he's just playing at a really high level. He's playing his game. We talked a lot last year about the inside scoring and the development there, but it's not even that right now. Like he's just playing his game on that perimeter, working those handoffs, and setting up everybody else. Like the only reason they were in that game in the first half was because Duncan was hitting shots, but also Duncan had a bunch of like assists and hockey assists where he was just pretty much setting everybody else up. So I would agree with you. I think they're at a point now where they know that lineup's going to be fine, but now it's about trying to find somebody to be serviceable in the other lineup. Because if you're playing Tyler, Duncan, and Bam together and you're saying that lineup's good, I mean, then you're talking about Terry with a lot of the other bench guys, and now you're hitting a spot where that's kind of the issue of the game, or that's kind of the dry part of the game. So that's kind of where you want Jimmy to come back in and take over that course. But right now they're not in that position to do that. And credit to Duncan, and like he's really carrying the offense, it feels like, for large portions of the game.
You're great. First, am I helicoptering or no?
No, you're good.
Okay. All right, we'll go this. All right, so let me give you a stat here. You tell me what you make of this. Terry Rozier played 27 minutes tonight. Duncan played 31, and Josh played 24. Is he moving away from Terry?
I think
slowly?
that this was as big a step in that direction as we've seen him go so far. And like for people who are, and I can see him in the chat, want him to move to the bench, this was at least a kind of test run of what some of that could look like when you just look at the minute distribution. But Terry is really hesitant right now. When he's hesitant, that's like the worst thing for him. And I don't know how they're going to fix that other than just a complete reset with him maybe coming off the bench. But this was the first indication that I think we've all seen of them maybe starting to flinch a little bit at some of these lineups with Terry.
Well, Alex, to that point, and I know people are going to call for Burks, they're going to call for Larson. By the way, you may get your chance on at least one of them, even with Jimmy coming back, because Hawkes' ankle injury did not look great. I mean, for those who didn't see it, he stepped back, kind of took 2 steps back, and then on the third step, stepped on McConnell's ankle and twisted it pretty badly. I mean, that looked like a pretty significant sprain. Again, we're not doctors. We don't even play him on TV, but it doesn't look to me like we're going to see him tomorrow night at the very least. So even if we see Jimmy, and I was expecting Jimmy to play tonight, Greg, you and I are both getting indications he was going to play today.
That's correct.
And that they would make a decision pregame, and then all of a sudden they didn't. So I don't know if there was holding him out for Monday. I know Ira was surprised also. I think everybody who covers the team was surprised Jimmy didn't play today. By the way, how many games has Jimmy missed now? 5?
4, I think.
4. I said before the season, he's not making it to 60 games. We'll see. We were trending in that direction now. All right. So as I look at this and I'm saying, okay, Rozier played 27. I know people want Larson or Burks to play ahead of Josh. I actually thought Josh's initial stint was pretty good. But then it's sort of diminishing returns the more that he plays. I don't want to hear complaints about like Haywood Highsmith missing 6 shots and 22 minutes. They're not counting on Haywood to be a scorer. Haywood is getting his opportunities off the actions of others. He's there to defend. Terry Rozier is another story. Okay. Like to me, the continuing 4 of 12s from Terry are much more concerning than an off night from Haywood. Okay.
Haywood
Alex,
was 6 of 6 last game, so like
right.
You're going to take those. They're
out.
going to go ebb
right,
and flow.
Right. What defines its level, Eric? Okay, so Haywood, I'm not concerned about that. What are they going to do about Terry, Alex? Like this is game after game after game. He's not playing competent basketball for them.
we've talked about it a lot over the past few episodes. It feels like we're, and it's so early into the season, right? Like it's crazy that we're already kind of beating a dead horse on the Terry subject, even though obviously there's still a lot more games to go and a lot more adjustments to be made. So I still feel the same way. I think that you're getting extremely diminishing returns compared to what you got from him last season. And it's not just like productivity and results and numbers, right? Because it's one thing like, oh, the points per game is down, but he's still playing an efficient game and playing within the flow of the offense. I cannot say that about Terry. It's the complete opposite, right? Like he's like Leif has mentioned, like we talked about before, he looks hesitant. And like it's bad that when he looks hesitant, like it's still like he's taking tough shots, but then like passing up on other ones. Like, and this is something that he's done for a while, right? Like he'll pass up an advantage after creating it, but the way that he's done it this season, it's like so much more. Like he will, like the move will be nice. Like he had one where he had a nice move today, right? For example, got to the rim and got Miles Turner, I believe it was, to overcommit to him, and he just puts up this BS lefty layup. He had no way, no angle of getting it off the backboard. It was like such an awkward layup. Instead of just passing it, for example, the dump down pass to Bam because Turner had overcommitted. It's like he can still get there, but it's so inconsistent now. Like he doesn't. It feels like he doesn't know when to shoot versus when to try to facilitate versus when to play off the catch. Like I feel like he's had a really tough time putting it all together. I mean, the finishing has never been a strength for him, but it looks a lot worse. He's not attacking quite as much. Like it feels like he's in his head a little bit, right? And I know that Terry's a confident player, but the way that it's manifesting itself on the court this season, it just does not look that way. And that's a problem. Like I mentioned at the end of last show, putting him to the bench, it feels like it's the easiest thing to do right now, but that might not necessarily solve everything because you're getting in the way of some of the bench guys' production. I just don't know what the move is. Like some people might want to start Duncan, right? Because he's playing so well. He's been awesome. And the Tyler Duncan minutes have been pretty good this season. Like I get that. You've got different ways that you can maneuver the starting lineup if you wish, right? If you want to send Terry to the bench, whether you go bigger, whether you go with Duncan, like I mentioned, I don't know what the move is. I think you really got to consider, the consequences of moving Terry to the bench and getting those units right, like Brady was talking about. I think they really got to get to work on that. But the Terry thing, he's just been bad. But honestly, the biggest number tonight for me, just the one thing I want to really hit home that we talked about a lot on playback is what they did in the paint today. The Heat shot 45% at the rim, 10 of 23. In the short mid-range, 19%, 3 of 16. So that to me is by far the biggest number of the game.
They still scored 110.
They shot well
Alex,
from three.
Right. Well, that's how bad Indiana's defense is. Like they shot a comical number for those areas, and they still got to 110. Because again, the Pacers are going to give you that. But a lot of this to me is about the point guard position because they're not. Terry's that's a place he should eat a little bit, and he doesn't. And then you're talking about Josh, who's not a pure point guard, who's got to play off the bench right now. And I actually think the Hawkins injury gives him an opening, and Jimmy coming back gives him an opening to put Duncan in the starting lineup. And here's why, okay? I think if you put Duncan in the starting lineup right now with Terry, if he's got, it scares me to have Love out there as the starting four with that group. So you really can't. You probably have to put Highsmith out there. Okay, so you get a little bit bigger in the backcourt. You're getting a little smaller up front. I want to get into defensive rebounding on the defending the house segment. So let's not go totally into that yet. Okay, but then you have Bam and Jimmy. Put Rozier on the second unit. Let him run the second unit. You don't have Hawkins, I don't think, for a couple weeks based on that, what that looked like. So Rozier essentially becomes your offensive guy in the second unit. Play Burks, okay? Play Burks or Larson off the bench with them and go a little bit, and then Jovic, and go a little bit differently with that group. I think, and we've said this now for a week or more, the more Bam, Duncan, Hero minutes you get at this stage together, the better. It's giving Duncan confidence, and he's becoming a factor for you consistently. He and Tyler play so easily off each other now. They seem to finally, like, it's like they just understand where they're going to be. Like, you had a feeling if they had a chance to win that game in the fourth, it was because Duncan and Tyler were going to shoot them back into it. And I'm okay right now with those kind of minutes as they sort of figure this thing out. And so I would just put Duncan in the starting lineup and let it roll. That's where I would go with it. And Terry has got to be put on the bench now. Because what's going to happen now is this is going to start to feed into not just his confidence, but his teammates' confidence in him. I think they're at a tipping point with him because he's been bad pretty much every game. So we can't get around it now, even those of us who like the trade. All right, I want to get to Greg's thoughts on a couple things here, but let's get to the play of the game because to me, I think it was when they couldn't get a damn defensive rebound. And now it's time for the X-Ray of the Play of the Day, brought to us by our friends over at Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services. Nelson and his team will bring the X-ray equipment and the staffing to you if you work in a hospital or a medical office. Get a consultation today at c-armandstaffing.com or give them a call at 561-891-9620. Their fleet of trucks at your service. Again, it's Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services, 561-891-9620. And now, the X-Ray of the Play of the Day. All right, Greg, Brady, I don't know which one he wants to jump in on. They were tied, right? And then there was that sequence where they gave up the 2 threes back-to-back. One of them was on ball bouncing around again. They cannot secure a defensive rebound when they need to secure a defensive rebound. I know people are going to say they're too small, but they've secured defensive rebounds even when they've been small. So, Greg, what do we think's going on here? Like, just bad bounces? It's just they've at least 2 games this year have been because they can't get a defensive rebound.
A lot of it. I mean, and you look tonight, they had 15 offensive rebounds and 23 defensive rebounds. That's not typical. You know what I'm saying? To have that close of a disparity between those two numbers. I think maybe fans would want to call for a guy like Khalil Ware in this instance, but that doesn't make a ton of sense against an Indiana team, I don't think. And especially on a night where Turner was as turned up as he was. I think you just have to keep continuing to come at it from a team perspective. It's got to be like gang rebounding. You got to have your guards down there, which Terry is not necessarily excelling in that way. He had 4 rebounds tonight. But I don't really see that there's any lineup shift that they can go to that's going to change that. That's just one of those things where when you play the same team twice, to outwork them twice on their home floor, I think is just a tough ask.
Brady, what do you think of this comment that came in here? And we appreciate it. I'm reading through them as they come. Am I helicoptering again? Okay. Read the last comment, Brady. The one about how they didn't have any timeouts and they're tired at that time. I'll come back.
What? Yeah, that was a great pass by Ethan. That was a.
I love how it goes to you every time that he helicopters.
It's just a chaotic pass over here to a spot up here. What is this about a timeout?
I'm back to save.
Okay, you could save it because I'm looking at the comments now. Is it the one where they were tired by that time and Spo doesn't have any timeouts left?
Timeout. I don't know. I mean, did he mismanage timeouts tonight? Like he didn't have a lot left at the end of the game.
I'm with Alex on this one. Like, I don't really. There's been games where I've kind of felt like coaching was the problem, but like when you cannot finish at the rim for that amount of time, I mean. Like this was not like a player not be able to finish at the rim. This was a team-wide thing. Like they had decent looks at the rim constantly. Like you saw what they did to Indiana a day ago. Like they could easily dice up this type of defense, but they just were not. I mean, Jaime didn't have it even before the injury. Like he had a kind of a really tough game and he didn't have the finishing. Jovic before kind of getting to the line a bunch and having a decent finish was not able to finish. Haywood 0 for 6. A lot of that was the finishing stuff. And Tyler, before he went on that crazy fourth quarter run, was really having some trouble finishing at the rim. So when you have that, and then like as you mentioned, the short mid ranges, like those not dropping, it was just not a good product. Like that's just you can't have that. I'm surprised they were even in the game with the way that went. Yeah. Like Indiana with the type of offense they were, like it felt like they should have pulled away way earlier in that game. And the Miles Turner thing is interesting just because Miami did essentially go bigger against him in a lot of these lineups. Like, I mean, they had Haywood at the 3 and Love at the 4. It's bigger than we've seen them, throw at these certain lineups in the past. But it felt like there was a lot of, they were mismatch hunting a lot more. Like that's pretty much what it was. I mean, there was times where you had Terry or Duncan or Haywood or a lot of these guys guarding Miles Turner where it wasn't the one-on-one, matchups that we saw in the last game. So The defensive stuff was inevitable. I kind of felt like Indiana would have a decent offensive game after the last game, but you cannot finish like that. Like if they didn't shoot well from 3 last game and they were able to bypass it, you cannot finish like that and think you're going to win against that team specifically.
All right. Well, Brady tipped off the defending the house segment, so we'll get to that in a minute. There's one comment that came in, and we're going to handle this in the last 5 minutes after defending the house, okay? Because I want to set the stage for the week a little bit with Philadelphia coming in, and again, we don't know if Embiid's going to play or not. But the comment that comes in from FLA Man, Terry needs to go. Why did they not trade for Murray over Terry? I felt like it made so much more sense. Any thoughts, Greg? Let's hit that afterwards. I want Alex to weigh in on the defense here. So let's go to defending the house. And now it's time for our Defending the House segment, sponsored by our friends over at The Real Estate Shop. You can find them at realestateshopfl.com. That's with 2 P's and an E, realestateshopfl.com, or at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. This is Javier Iglesias and Amanda Martin. They help buyers and sellers in real estate. They're nimble and protective of their clients. They service the entire Tri-County area. That's Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties with a proven on-market strategy. The Real Estate Shop sellers earn the most money in the shortest time frame because Amanda and Javier have a deep understanding of the local market. So check them out. Again, it's at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram, realestateshopfl.com, or give them a call at 954-268-9812. And now, who defended the house? So Alex, they didn't have Neesmith and they didn't have Nembhard, right? So really very little production out of the guard position for Indiana tonight. I mean, Halliburton was 4 of 13. He did have 13 assists. He had the 2 threes late where we're like, oh, he's starting to get going, but he wasn't the guy to hurt them tonight. Turner, here's the numbers on three starters in the front court. Okay, Mathurin, I guess, is a wing, but Turner was 14 of 23. Siakam was 9 of 11. Mathurin was 6 of 10. So they got 20 of 33, 44, 29 of 44 from those 3 players. Go.
Well, not good enough, Ethan. That's what it comes down to. I just think the defense was not where it needed to be tonight. It's one thing to be absolutely awful in the paint, right at the rim and in the short mid-range. It's really tough to win a game when the other team is shooting 30% better than you at the rim and in the short mid-range. Those are supposed to be the easy shots. So that's one thing, right? And I feel like it's one thing for them to shoot that poorly on the offensive side on the easy shots, but they're also giving them up. And I think the Pacers were not having a great offensive game to start with. I think at halftime they had a 25th percentile offensive rating. It was not good. And they ended up finishing the game with an 87th percentile offensive rating. It was the second half. I think they really got going there. They got hot. You mentioned in the fourth quarter, for example, Halliburton finally seeing a couple go down. Those were some costly ones. The ones that I'm going to remember from the fourth quarter were, by the way, the Heat had a 35-point fourth quarter. Their scoring was not the issue at the end of the game. The defense was, because they gave up another 30-something like they did in the third quarter to the Pacers. And the 2 that are going to stick out to me, shout out Nico. He had a pretty good offensive game. But, yeah, the ones where he got caught over-helping off of Turner, one for a wide-open 3, and the other one he closed out too hard and fouled him or whatever. Those were very costly. Really, the defense just was not up to standard. And, look, it's not an easy thing, right? The Pacers are supposed to be a high up tempo offensive team. It's not something that it's easier said than done. But you had both problems. You were missing all your easy ones and also giving up too many of the easy ones. And I think they just kind of got going a little bit in the second half. The Pacers did. And I think they started feeling themselves because, the Heat, 19 threes tonight. That's really what kept you in the game. You hit 6 more threes than the Pacers. That's what kept you in the game. But those bunnies, man, I just keep coming back to it because that really decided the game there. You let the Pacers get going in the paint and you couldn't hit a single damn thing in the paint. That's what this game comes down to. And you guys already mentioned the rebounding margin. It was very upside down for the Heat. To be they finished the game up 5 in the offensive rebound margin and down 12 in the defensive rebound margin. Am I looking at that right? That's really weird for them. And they're usually very solid, throughout the whole Jimmy era. They're a very solid defensive rebounding team and not a good offensive rebounding team. So, yeah, I think that's a little bit anomalous, and it has to do with all the missed shots down low. So I don't even want to give them credit for the offensive rebounds. It's like you're already there. I'm not going to give you credit for missing all those shots at the paint. So yeah, like I just think it's too many things to try to overcome.
Great. To close the loop on this, and then Greg and I are going to close on the Lowry Rozier thing here. When you take a look at who they're playing, okay, and you see the front court going off, the answer, excuse me, for some Heat fans is going to be, well, play where? Right? You're playing Love and Jovic as your backup bigs right now. I mean, essentially. I mean, Love's playing backup minutes, right? I mean, basically. He's a starter, but in name only. I mean, is there anything to that at all?
I mean, it's almost like for show, like they start the game big, but like they never go back to it. So I mean, they've done this over the years. So like whenever they've done the Myers thing or the Olynyk thing, this has been the case. But they're in a spot now where if you're not playing where and you're playing big in your starting lineup, you're just basically going small in all the in between part of the game. Where Jovic was like the quote unquote 5 at decent certain portions of that game. That's kind of the call for where, I guess, because that's the next guy up there. But I just feel like it's more about the positional size thing. And when they're without Jimmy and Jaime goes down, you really see it. Like you really see how much they lose out with that flexibility offensively, with the fact of what just the pure size defensively. Like those two guys, you need one of them. And when two of them drop out, I was almost looking around and wondering if Pella was going to get run, but I think it was too late in the game, and Spo never likes to throw guys into the fire. But that's another name. I mean, I'm at a point now where we're talking about Josh and kind of what he's providing. And I agree. I think he had a decent stretch to start the game, but I think the more he plays, I just think there's too much, possibilities of mistakes happening. And there's just like, there's too many errors in between when he gets a large portion of minutes. Whereas Pella, I almost lean in his direction just for that I trust him more at this point, actually defensively. And he can just do so many things where he doesn't need the ball in his hands. He really doesn't. Like he can actually find different gaps to attack offensively that I just think he makes a lot of sense for this team. And the fact that we're coming back to this point, and I'm not blaming the loss on this, trust me, like all the things we listed already was more so on the loss, but that we're calling for the two rookies to play is pretty crazy. Like the fact that we're saying like the two rookies that just got drafted could make the difference in the rotation. And these guys should be the replacements. I think it's inevitable, like whoever's not playing or to say should have played when it's a type of loss like this. But I do think Pella can help, especially with Jaime down. Pella's going to be he needs to be in the rotation. Like for the next few weeks, the next few games, he needs to be playing valuable minutes because they need him in that spot. And where thing, I think, just look at the teams coming up. I know you guys are going to look ahead to Philly, but this was definitely a matchup where other than the Turner minutes, I mean, they're pretty undersized. So I think that's the thought process of not playing where. It's just rough that the fact that the one guy that absolutely killed them tonight was Turner, and specifically on mismatches. So I don't know if I'm going to blame it on that, but I do think coming up, like they have to get back to that flexibility that they had early in the season where they played a certain guy in the first half and they played another guy in the second half. It just like if Haywood doesn't have it, go to the next guy. Just like when Jovic didn't have it and they went to the next guy. Like I think they have to just rely on their depth to another level. Just keep that revolving door going.
You're on mute.
It's just strange because it felt like Jovic was I was trying to fend off the helicopters because it felt like Jovic was the scapegoat in the starting lineup, and then he's playing 30-plus minutes off the bench lately. I do want to mention one thing here. Well, we got a lot of you here, and we appreciate all of you for that. And then Greg and I are going to close the loop here on some of this Lowry Rozier stuff as we look ahead. Make sure you subscribe to our Discord or Off the Floor. This is where you're going to find the most Heat content. And we are going to do, so we got 5 off days this week. So we're going to use them to start doing the stage shows there. They're going to be exclusive to Discord. So in addition to the podcast comments, so if you want to have interactions with us like you do here in the comments, that's going to be the place to do it. The link is right here in the description, but make sure you click through. We have a lot of people, they sign up, but they think, well, I don't see anything. You have to pay. It's $2.99 if you do it on laptop. It's $3.99 if you do it on your Apple iPhone. So if you can do it on a laptop, do it there. We post the link in here. That's the one that you should click all the way through. Yes.
The link in the description should lead to the page where it shows up $2.99, even if you do it on iPhone, just to let everybody know.
Okay, so do it on there, sign up, and we're trying to build a community the size of OnlyFins. Some of you are on that for the Dolphins, and we want to get the community to that level. We actually added a Sioux Falls channel today, You can see all the other channels if you're watching there on YouTube. And you can again communicate with us, but also with others at the 5 Reasons Sports Network. All right, so let's get to this, Greg, because we're at this stage. We're 12 games in the season. You and I both were in favor of them trading Kyle Lowry last year and a first-round pick to get Terry Rozier. It kind of feels at this point like, as frustrated as we were with Kyle, there were certain games where he just didn't do harm. Right.
Yeah.
Like we wanted him to do more, but he didn't do harm. It just seems like lately, like Terry is doing harm. He's not doing it intentionally, but his style of play is such that when he's not playing well, it makes things worse.
You articulated it perfectly, because Kyle was actually a part of a lot of positive lineups, frankly. Like that wasn't the issue. It was more of just like the raw production wasn't there. And obviously behind the scenes, there wasn't always beautiful moments. But I guess I'll just say this to the comment that we got about, like, why not DeJounte Murray instead? The Heat chose to keep an additional draft pick. Remember, DeJounte Murray went to New Orleans for 2 first-round picks and a bunch of contracts, whereas Terry Rozier was able to be acquired via 1 first-round pick. And I think the Heat valued their draft picks probably more than ever right now. And so they didn't do that move and now they're, you could say, okay, maybe they should have added that additional pick to have DeJounte Murray instead of Rozier. But I think when you're looking long-term, probably that pick makes more sense for them. So it's just a situation where Terry has to play better, and it doesn't look good right now because of the financial flexibility you lost when you traded that expiring contract that Kyle Lowry was. But this is the situation that they're in, and they have to make the best of it. And I think that that's going to involve Terry taking another role off the bench.
I think that's the temporary solution. I think the longer term thing here is, I think this might inform their decisions going forward. They made a hedge move. We talked about at the time. It was like a hedge move. You're not going to give up all your picks, but you're going to give yourself a chance. And they felt they had a chance because they hadn't seen the team healthy, right? And then Terry got hurt. And then Jimmy got hurt, and so there was no chance. And there probably wasn't a chance anyway, right? They were probably hope trafficking themselves that there could be a chance, particularly with the year that Boston was having. But I think it's informative for this trade deadline. I do not think they will make another of those type of hedge moves. I don't think they'll dump a pick to get slightly better. No. I think it's either going to be you're going all in, which I don't see them doing, or it's kind of a pivot move, step back move, sort of keep majority of your assets, maybe move a Rozier or Jimmy or something else along those lines. I don't think they're going to do this again. It hasn't worked. There's no other way to put it. Like, I like the trade. You like the trade. We talked up the trade. We were tired of watching. Well, that one comes in. Thank you, Alex, for doing that. We've gone through all of it. Okay. But I just, it's not working. And it doesn't, and I also don't think they saw Tyler blowing up the way that he has. But now that he has, it's like it's left Terry in the dust here. And he's not the kind of player he needs next to him. They need a long defensive wing next to him who can spot up and make a 3. That's where I'm at with it. I don't think it's this type of point guard because Terry's not really playing like a point guard anyway. He's just small.
I'll just close by saying that I think it's a situation where they are not going to overpay for anyone. Like, that is what you're learning about the way that they're approaching the trade market. Even with the top level superstars that we've talked about, they refuse to overpay. And I wouldn't expect them to change that strategy going forward, whether they win or lose.
Well, what we're going to start talking about is that Terry's going to be an expiring $22.3 million contract next year. And that's where this conversation is probably going to go. All right. Appreciate Alex, Brady, Greg all joining. Appreciate the 9 that were on playback tonight. Again, sub to the Discord. We'll have full coverage. Brady, Alex, and myself will all be in the building on Monday night. Greg's got the podcast with Sean Rochester. And we hate to say this, our guy Major Passons. So go to Better Edge, bet against the Heat. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.